Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 937B, and today's date is April 5th, 2016, and the title of the episode is The Plan Leaked Panama Papers Are Being Used by the West to Push Specific Agendas. Now, I just want to make an announcement before I get started. I uploaded an interview with John Rubino on the X22 Report Spotlight YouTube channel. So all you need to do is go over to YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight. It'll bring you right over to the video, or you can come over to the x22report.com site, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side. You will see the video there, or you can go over to newssentinel.com. Same thing, scroll down a little bit, look over to your right-hand side. You'll see the video right there. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, yesterday we talked about the Panama Papers leak, and we can see that the leak was given to the Western corporate media, which, as we all know, they are the gatekeepers to information. They will give information, they will hold back information, they'll lie about information. And we can see when we look at the Western corporate media that the top story on there is about Putin, it's about China, and they're putting all of those leaders on the front. And what's missing is the Americans. Now, they threw in a couple of them, sprinkled them around a little bit, and we can see at this point that the Western corporate media, they're keeping certain information back. Most likely we'll never see certain information. But the leak is being managed by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, which is funded and organized entirely by the USA's Center for Public Integrity. And their funders include the Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Endowment, Rockefeller Family Fund, the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, the Open Society Foundation, which is Soros, and there are many others. And we can see at this point from these different organizations that the information is really not going to get out there. And we see that a lot of it is directed in a certain direction. And we know that this is all part of many different agendas. Now, we see that there are three leaders of the BRIC nations. And those nations, are part of a separate financial structure from the private Western central bank system. There have been amassing gold. And we can see right now they're focusing on those people. And we see that there's others like Poroshenko, but he really hasn't been brought that deep into it. We know it goes much deeper, but they threw these other people in to make it look good. Because we can see at this point, their agenda, one of their agendas, is to go after certain leaders like Putin, like Xi Jinping, and many others. Now, this doesn't mean that they're all innocent, because as we know, that most of these leaders of different countries, they're corrupt. Most of them are very, very wealthy. A lot of them don't want to pay taxes, or most of them don't want to pay taxes at all. Only the little people pay taxes, so that's why they have these offshore accounts, and this is why they hide their money. Now, if we really think the U.S. doesn't have any of this, just because we don't see the names, well, they're being kept off the news on purpose. But we have to remember something very important here. And I mentioned this back a couple of reports about Operation Beluga. And this is coming from a French security expert, Paul Baril. And he says that the Operation Beluga is a covert Western intelligence scheme intended to undermine Russia and its leaders. And we can see this is part of the agenda. Now, we see another part of the agenda is to cause chaos in many of the countries. We see that the Prime Minister of Iceland, he just resigned. We see other Latin American officials resigning. So we're starting to see there's a little bit of a purpose here and a little bit of a push to get the people inside certain countries to remove their leaders. So let's go through this. What is part of their main agenda here? Well, most likely they're going to create laws to break the barriers to have access to all financial info around the world so they can collect more of this tax money to bring in more revenue into the U.S., just like FATCA and Obamacare and a carbon tax they'd like to do. It shows that the U.S. leaders are completely above this, and they don't deal in this type of criminal behavior, which we know is fake, phony, and false. They're going to create more laws explaining why we need to get rid of cash, because look at this. All these leaders from all these different countries, company and different corporations, they're hiding all of this in cash. And you know what? If everything was digital, it'd be very easy to track all of this. So it would be a good idea to get rid of cash. Now, am I saying all of this is going to happen tomorrow? No, but they're going to make the case as time goes on. They want to show that the leaders of the BRICS banking system, they're corrupt. They want to demonize Putin, Xi Jinping, and many of the other leaders. They want the people in Russia, in China, in Latin America, in Iceland, because remember, Iceland threw the bankers into jail. Iceland took back their economy, and the central bankers don't like this. So what they want is they want these people to resign. They want the people to rise up and push these people out of power. This way they can swoop on in and install a puppet government. It's a very easy type of scenario that enables them to go in there very easily with NGOs and actually join in with the people and create an instance where the elected government is completely removed. So we can see that they have many different agendas here, and they are pushing this as hard as they possibly can. And they're going to let out more and more leaks as time goes on. And to me, this seems very planned and very strategic at a time that the economy is completely falling apart. And they need to get into more of these countries, replace the leaders, spread the debt, set up a central bank, and we can see how this is being done at this point. And if that doesn't work, they just demonized all these people. They made them look all evil for the upcoming war. Now, France is deploying armed guards to patrol trains at this point. They saw what happened in Brussels, and they're not dressing them up in fatigues. These are going to be civilian dressed people to blend in with the passengers. And they're going to have about 3,000 armed plainclothes officers that are going to patrol all these areas. And we can see more and more of these countries are bringing in more and more police to the area. We see the UK is doing it. We see a lot of countries in Europe are doing it. France is doing it. And this is going to continually spread. We've seen this in the past where they continually bring in more troops in, create these draconian laws, take away the rights of the people, take away the freedoms of the people. And this is what we're seeing right now because they're deathly afraid of the people themselves, figuring out that it was the government, it was the central bank that caused this problem, because we're getting closer and closer for this entire system completely crashing. And they know this. And this is why we're seeing a ramp up of all of this. Now, the U.S. has decided that they're not going to use the Air Force to fly drones anymore. And they're starting to hire private companies that are operating in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and many other countries. Of the two companies, one is the Aviation Unmanned. It's a small veteran-owned outfit operating out of Dallas. The second is General Atomics, which is a large San Diego, California-based military contractor. And we can see at this point is that they're removing the people, the people's armed forces, and replacing them with contractors, paid mercenaries. Because this is what a fascist country does. It gets rid of the people and replaces it with mercenaries that are connected to corporations, that are receiving a huge fee because they'll do whatever they're paid to do. The people's armed forces, they question. They say, I'm not comfortable with this. And this is why we're starting to see the switch right now. Now, out in Libya, we see the unity government is really pushing hard, and we're starting to see that the elected government in Tripoli, one of the officers of the government has resigned, and we're starting to see that the elected government might stop and they might cease operations in the country, and they'll just turn it all over to the unity government because there is so much force right now. And we see that the United States government, central bankers, and the coalition forces, they are getting their way at this time. Now, we've talked about how the U.S. and the coalition forces will be going back into Libya, and this has been planned for a very long time. I know they're making it seem like they've just come up with it, but this has been planned, and we can see we're getting more confirmation from Obama, where he's saying that the U.S. and NATO, they are going to send in troops, and they're going to start bombing in Libya. Obama gave a convoluted statement, but basically what he's saying is they're in the advanced stages of planning a new invasion of Libya. Well, the whole thing has been planned. They were just waiting for the unity government. And this is why he's making the announcement right now. And we can see at this point that there's going to be boots on the ground. They're going to be bombing all different areas. NATO is going to be in there. The coalition forces are going to be in there. And we see at this point that we have another war on our hands here. And this is going to spread once again because we see it in Libya. We see it happening in Yemen. We see it happening in Lebanon. It's already happening in Iraq. They're still trying to get into Syria and Iran. And we see at this point that they are pushing their agenda in different locations. They just want to get a war started. Now, as we can see, Azerbaijan and Armenia, they have been fighting. And it seems like the Karabakh Defense Army, they received an order to stop fighting right now. There's a little bit of a ceasefire, a lull in the fighting. And we know that John Kerry, he visited Azerbaijan a couple days before, and all of a sudden fighting broke out. So we can see that they're trying to push the agenda and have something happen in this area. Now, this has the potential to extend beyond this entire region. Now, Moscow does not want a full-scale war, and if there is some type of war, most likely Russia will be drawn into this, and this is exactly what they want. Now, we have to remember, in Armenia, Russia has the 102nd military base, and back in February of 2016, and I reported this on episode 899, Russia reinforced the Armenia, the base there, with fourth-generation fighter jets and modernized helicopters. They brought in MiG-29s and Mi-8MT helicopters, and there's a base near the capital of Armenia, and they placed them there. Now, we know that there's pipelines that are going through this area. They want them to go through Armenia. Russia is there. They want their pipeline to go through. And we see at this point, this would be an opportunity for the U.S. government, central bankers, Turkey, to push a war in this area to get Russia involved once again. And we're going to have to watch this situation very, very carefully. Now, out in Syria, we see the Syrian army. They have defeated the Islamic State in Deir ez-Zor. They completely retook the entire area. And now they're pushing deep into the desert, and they're trying to clear out the rest of the country, and they are moving eastward. So we can see right now the Islamic State, they are continually losing ground. The proxy army for the United States government, central bankers, and the coalition forces, they're running into a problem. Now, at this point, they probably don't care about the Islamic State because it's a no-win situation. This is why they're bringing in and training the Free Syrian Army. This is why special forces are coming in. This is why they want the coalition forces in there, because again, it's filling a void. Now, Syria at this point has rejected the Kurdish declaration of federal region in the north, because as we know, the plan of the United States government central bankers is to split up Syria into the Kurdish region, the Shiite, the Sunnis, the Alawite section, and they want to do this to the rest of the Middle East. But right now, Syria is saying, no, this is not on the drawing board. We're not approaching this whatsoever. And as we can see, as we go further into this year, and as these battles in Syria remove the Islamic State, the United States government central banker is really in a corner at this point. It's backed into a corner, and we can see they're formulating a lot of different plans, trying to push the next major event. And they're continually telling us about all of these different events throughout Europe and the United States where the Islamic State is coming to get us. Well, they're telling us the Islamic State is in Libya. They're telling us the Islamic State is in Yemen. They're saying it's all over the place. It can't be controlled. Obama came out and even said that. And right now we're starting to see they're producing these fake videos, trying to convince everyone that the Islamic State is coming to the West. And they're showing that London, Berlin, Rome, they're all going to be possible targets. The video features a member of the group. Of course, he's speaking English, so we all understand what's going on here. That they're going to see attacks in all of these areas. And only Allah knows where the next attack is going to be. And these attacks are going to be much, much worse than what we've seen. Now, they showed footage of the Eiffel Tower collapsing, but, these showed up in video games like Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 3, and they're just showing different scenes of things falling apart to scare everyone. Now, we know this is going to be an inside job. We know that they're using this to scare everyone. And what we're going to see going forward as this economy collapses is everything accelerate, because we need to realize that the U.S., the central bankers, to keep their system alive, to keep their way of life going, they have no choice. Remember, back in 2008, their plan was to completely take control of all the Middle Eastern countries, put in a puppet government, and keep the petrodollar alive, and then eventually go into Syria and Iran, and this was supposed to be completed by 2008. But here we are in 2016, and we've been reporting how the economy is completely falling apart, deteriorating very, very rapidly and quickly. And we know at this point the only thing they have is to keep the stock market alive, to make everyone think that everything is fine. They have the ability to suppress the precious metals market so people don't realize that something's happening. Most of the corporate media keeps away from what's really going on in the economy, and they keep spewing the illusion that everything is fine. They did this back in 2008 all the way up to the very end, and then when the crash was happening, they told everyone that everything was going to be fine in the next couple of months, and actually got worse. Well, the same thing's happening right now. And we can see from everything that we've been talking about is they're coming to a point where they have no alternative but to push this next event, because they need to completely take control of the entire Middle Eastern area. Now, we're starting another war in Libya. We're going to have ground troops there. We're going to be bombing, because as we know, the people are not going to agree with this new puppet government. A lot of the locals do not agree with the new unity government in Libya. So this is going to be another battle. Same thing's happening in Yemen. Lebanon, we know something's about to happen there, because all the diplomats from all the different coalition forces were evacuated. And we see they're trying to spark different things all around this entire region, because they realize at this point it's quite impossible to take control of all of these countries. It's just not going to work. They're not going to be able to keep the petrodollar propped up. So their only alternative at this point is to create havoc everywhere and to try to provoke a war. So we see the Panama Papers that have come out. They're definitely using it for a certain agenda to create protests, riots, and we see it in Latin America. We saw it in Iceland. They're asking their leaders to step down, and they want this to happen in China. They want it to happen in Russia. They want it to happen in all of these countries, because they realize their backs are against the wall. They need to use all of these things to try to provoke these countries, to try to push their agenda, because they are running out of time. And they don't want the entire system to come down by itself, because this would be a problem for the central bank, the elites, the U.S. government, because remember, everyone is going to say, wait a minute. For the last 8 years, they've been telling us that we have been in a recovery. And you're trying to tell me, out of the blue, that the economy just fell apart? Now, if there's no event, if there's nothing to be, if there's no one else to blame it on, how could this possibly happen? And this is why, at this point, that they're trying to push this as hard as they can. Now, as we go through this summer, we need to watch certain things. Gold is up today. If we see gold moving up like $100 and then it's suppressed like $50, this is a signal that things are rapidly falling apart, because gold is making new highs and they can't suppress it anymore. Which then people around the world are going to look at this and say, okay, what's going on here? Because that means the value of the dollar is declining. That means the stock market most likely is coming down at this point. Now they're going to try to keep everything, and we're going to see it bouncing around as we move throughout this year. But as this starts to happen, things are going to rapidly fall apart. This most likely is the signal, when things really rapidly fall apart, that they're going to plan the next event. And these are the things that we need to watch at this point. We could see at this point, back in January, things started out really, really bad. We're bouncing around the top. The smart money's getting out. And now here we are at this point where things are rapidly falling apart. The market's going to be coming down. They're going to try to push it back up. It's going to come down even further. Gold is going to rise up. And when we see it going up $50, $60, $70, $80, $100, and they suppress it by 50, this is a signal. And if these time periods come closer and closer together, that means we're heading closer and closer to this disaster. Now, the number of times that this happens, we don't know. It might happen once and they might do the event. It might happen another time where gold goes up 100, they smack it down, I don't know, 50, 60, doesn't matter what the number is. They can't bring it back to where it was. And we don't know how many times. So each time this happens, we need to be aware that something is about to occur. It might be once, it might be twice, it might be 3 times. But we need to watch this, because one of these areas, when this starts to happen, that's when they're going to push this event. And this is when we're going to see the false flag. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.